Good morning and welcome back or welcome. I am so happy that today is actually a very beautiful sunny day. And even though the weather has been like coming back and forth, cold and warm, because I feel like just a couple weeks ago it was really nice and then it went back to cold and rainy, but today I think it's here to stay. I'm just gonna hope. It's so beautiful. I can literally hear the birds chirping outside. So I thought today I have a day off, I'm home, and I want to paint. But before I do, I want to do something that I haven't done in a while here in the channel, and I actually want to bring it back for good because before I did it just occasionally, but I want to make it like sort of like its own thing and try to do it weekly, and it's the study with me. Because I know I mentioned before how it helped me so much when I make it into a video, and I feel like I am talking about it and sharing it rather than just reading and moving on. So I think that is what I'm gonna be doing today and try to keep it up weekly. See, first of all, I want to talk about why I love these study with me's, and let me preface by saying this is specifically art history. I think that it puts me in the right mindset. Obviously, this is not like for any college or schooling or anything. This is just me personally wanting to learn more. So I don't really have like a program or anything that I'm following, but I do want to show you what I do because I kind of create my own little program, and it's not perfect, it's not very detailed because I just kind of go as I keep studying and I keep running out of topics. I just keep adding more and more and more, so I don't really prepare so much ahead of me, but I will show you a little bit of like how I study and what I do for it. But yeah, I am gonna be choosing one of my favorite artists for today because I do have already a painting in mind that I want to do. So this is not necessarily like to work on a painting inspired on this artist. It's more like seeing what I can learn from them and what I can apply in my personal art. I do love doing some studies of these artists where I try to replicate their paintings. It's such a good way to learn. There is nothing like just looking exactly at the painting you're trying to do, and then as you work on it, you realize the things you're doing and you pay attention on, okay, it looks like he did this, so you at the same time are practicing it. It's really helpful, it's really nice, but that's not what I'm gonna be doing today. I will, however, be trying to take notes not only on the artists themselves or their art, but what they were thinking while they were working on it, what techniques they applied, not necessarily on the way that they did the brush strokes, but just in general. And I will be sharing it with you. I will be also sharing in the notes the written format of it on my blog, on my website, that I will also link here because I am trying to be really active on my blog. So I really think that's another good thing about the study with me. That's gonna keep me so accountable of just keeping up with my blog, because I want to make it more educational in a sense, just the things I learn, not necessarily me teaching anything, but just my personal notes, just sharing it in case you're interested and whatnot. So yeah, I am going to be starting that now. I will be going back and forth between learning about the artists' lives, their work, what was going on at the time period, but I will be just focusing on the highlights that I think are interesting for me personally and that I feel like I personally will apply to my art. So let's go. Okay, so to begin with, I am going to be using different sources to get the information. I'm going to be using the internet, I'm gonna look it up, but also I've got these books that I'm gonna be using, and I got this one from an art museum in Tennessee, I think. I don't remember where because I got it a long time ago, I think around like 2 or 3 years ago. This one I bought at Barnes & Noble, and I actually collect these. These are the Taschen? I don't know how to pronounce it, but they have different artists and different art movements and all of that. So I'm gonna be using this one too. And then this one I got on Etsy because I like to buy used or old art books, and this one was one of them. And yeah, so I'm going to use my books, the internet, and everything I can find to kind of find inspiration and write a little bit about what I enjoy of Monet's art and his methods and all of that. You know it's serious when the glasses come out. I am going to start taking some more notes. I basically wrote down some notes while I was reading some of the books. I'm gonna show you. This book is about Impressionism in general, so I marked all the ones that are specifically about Monet. And just to show you an example, I underlined some of the key points that I think were really interesting, and then wrote some notes about what I thought about them or what ideas they give me and all that. And I am now going to pass them to my Notion. I'm gonna type them out and also add some of the quotes from the book and all of that. Just try to keep it all in one place since I'm using a lot of different sources. Also, I looked up on some websites some information about him, and for these I basically just kept it as little key points because there wasn't really anything I wanted to quote completely, so I just kept some key points about interesting things that I found, and I'm gonna start sharing them with you. So one of the really interesting things that I saw, it's about his love for landscapes, the environment, specifically Paris, the Normandy coast, painting people doing like leisure activities. And even though there's people present in a lot of their paintings, a lot of his paintings, it's interesting to notice how, because obviously this is Impressionism, there is not a hyperrealism. Yes? Can I help you? There's always gonna be somebody interrupting the class. As I was saying, his main focus was the landscapes around people. And it's interesting to notice that in a lot of these landscapes, even though there was people in them, they're represented by just a couple dots of paint. You'll see so much vibrancy, so much color, so much detail in the landscape around them, but the people are represented with just the most minimal detail because they're not the main focus. Also, kind of tying to that point, I saw how a lot of the subjects of his paintings when it came to people was his family. Even though his family was currently at the time going through a lot of hardships. He's got a difficult relationship with his father and the mother of his son, who he eventually married, and all of his family was just going through it. But all the paintings that he represents them, they always look very happy and relaxed, and that is very notable in a lot of his art, where you never see any sign of a hardship in his life through his art. All of his art is just showing his love for nature and for life in general, just the beautiful representation and the bright colors that he used. Even, which is something that I do with my paintings, and I didn't know he did too, he used a very light, vibrant base under his paint, opposed to the dark color that is usual in landscapes at the time. So that's kind of also what helped his paintings be so vibrant and beautiful and colorful. Another thing that I really found interesting is about his subjects in the landscapes. And obviously, especially at the time, art was very subject to criticism. It was a very big thing that artists were criticized and belittled for their subjects, their methods, their techniques not fitting what was popular at the time or what was acceptable at the time, to the point where they would get rejected from galleries and whatnot. And this happened to Monet as well, because one of the things that he was able to do is find beauty in the mundane and in things that are not generally a topic of beauty, especially in that time. One of those things was fog. That was one of his favorite motifs, and there is several paintings where he chose the landscapes, the images, the time, all of it, because he wanted to capture the fog in the painting. Some of these paintings are Impression Sunrise, Saint Lazare train station. I'm sorry, the pronunciations, I'm gonna struggle a little bit. The Manaport. I'll put them here, so in case I'm mispronouncing the words, at least you'll know what I'm talking about. But yeah, he loved painting around it, and there is this really interesting quote that I took note of, because I think it's so interesting to see the way his brain worked, but also something that I think it's worthy of replicating, because it's so hard sometimes to be mentally blocked when it comes to ideas of what to paint. And I think it's so was genius the way that he viewed subjects and found something to be painted. Let me show you the quote. So this is talking specifically about the painting Impression Sunrise and the criticism that people had for that painting because of the fog around it. And one of the things is that they specifically said fog is not a motif to be painted. So he says, those poor blind people want to see everything clearly in the fog. A critic explained to him that fog was not a motif for a painting. This lack of understanding provided an irresistible instigation for Monet to paint something much more foggy. And that leads to the next paintings, which is the train station. And still thinking about the criticism that the Impression Sunrise got. Years later, Renoir, who was his roommate and friend, he recalls that Monet said, "I've got it, Saint Lazare. When the trains pull out, the clouds of smoke are so thick that you can hardly make anything out. It's magical, just like a fairy tale come to life." And I thought that was beautiful because of course he would go and find a train station with all of its noise and crowded spaces to be something out of a fairy tale. And I think that is something that it's hard to see on many occasions when you go out and you're trying to find that perfect thing to paint. And I think, to me personally, what this teaches me is that the perfect thing to paint is in your eye. It's on how you perceive things, because the fact that so many people thought these were things that were not worth painting, yet he not only saw them as beautiful, he thought these were fairy tale-like. Also, it's interesting that these are things that are difficult, because I mean, think about it. These are not times where you could just take a picture and then later keep working on it using that picture as a reference. He had to go out there and wait for the perfect lighting. But if you're not done in the few hours that light is there, you're gonna have to wait for days until that lighting is exactly what you wanted it to be again. Combined with the fog, combined with the time, it's so much. And that's actually one of the other very interesting things I found about Monet. He was so specific and so particular about his motifs because a lot of them relied on all of these details setting up and aligning just right. Like the weather, the time of the day, the lighting, the wind, everything had to be perfect. In one of the cases, it's the Manaport. Perfect example of this. So this one, I have another quote that I think was really interesting. It's a writer called Guy de Maupassant. And he accompanied Monet on some of the searches for his motifs, and he noted this. In reality, he was no longer a painter. He had become a hunter. He walked, followed by children who carried his canvases, 5 or 6 canvases which showed the same scene at different times and with different effects. He took one after the other, laying them aside as the sky changed. The painter lay in wait in front of the subject, on the lookout for sunshine and shadows, caught a ray of sunlight or a passing shadow with a few brush strokes and, disdainful of anything false or common, transferred them to his canvas with great mastery. So these are not things that just happened. This is something that, like he said, it was almost like a hunt for this perfect thing. And I thought that was such a fun way to see it because, I mean, it is exactly what it is. Trying to find that perfect motif, it is like a hunt where you have to chase this in a sense. And I think that is exactly what happened in these examples, these paintings, and what made them so amazing. The fact that he had multiple canvases where he worked on the same subject, just the different lights of the day until he could get the right one, I think that is something so crazy, but also so it shows that passion for painting. Because I'm gonna be honest, I don't think I would be able to do that. But now I want it. Like that would have never occurred to me. But now just because he did it, I want to do it. I think that is something that I've seen a lot of artists do. And even though I think it's so cool to see it, I never really understood fully why and why should I. But now after reading it and seeing it from this point of view, it's made me want to experiment a little bit more with my painting in plein air and all that, because I do use pictures as reference. All I gotta do is just pull out my pictures again and keep working. But I feel like there is an extra element that I am missing from painting. And not to say that it's necessary or that it makes you any less of an artist, anything like that. I just personally feel like I would love to experience this at some point in my life. Just that feeling of that extra layer of satisfaction you got after finishing that painting that you know took you so long and so many different attempts, so much work behind it. I think that is something that you would definitely have as a highlight in your life. And I would love to try that. Another thing, I have some little key points, like the key points I mentioned at the beginning, that are not quotes or a lot of information, just things I thought were interesting. One of them is how he was influenced by Japanese wooden prints, and that is why his art emphasized the two-dimensional surfaces. This one I thought was also cool. This one ties up to what we were talking about, of how he painted the same thing over and over again to make sure he got exactly what he wanted from the lights and everything. And they are usually shown in exhibitions in group. So he painted the same scenes again at different times of the day with different lighting. He reworked canvases to their finished state, and they were usually exhibited in group. which again, I think it's something that kind of inspired me, where I want to do something like that someday, where I have a group set of paintings that look almost like a sequence one from the other, you know, like that you can tell it's not just that they're related to each other, but they are the same thing with subtle differences. And just seeing them next to each other, I love that idea. And I have seen his work before. I think this is one of the things why I love learning about art history, because these artists and their work are so famous and so known. You probably see them a million times, but understanding the context behind it, it helps you appreciate it so much more. Because as much as I loved Monet's art, I gotta be honest, I never really looked a lot into it. This is one of my most recent goals that I've been wanting to learn about what it really is behind all of this art. So I was more of an observer rather than really knowing what the paintings were even about. So as beautiful as I thought they were, I didn't really understand why his art was so like repetitive in a sense. Now that I know what it is, I know not only why, but now I know that when I go and see it, when I go and look at it, I can tell why it's different, why there had to be multiple, and why they are not the same. I think that helps you grow your appreciation for art so much more, not only as an artist, because of course I want to be inspired by these artists and their work and hopefully be able to implement one or two things of their techniques or their motifs or something that I've learned, but even just as a lover of art and just an enjoyer, it's so much more interesting to see this work come to life when you understand why they even exist. So yeah, I thought that would be so interesting to share. Like I said, I will be writing these notes a little more organized, and I will be posting them on my blog and sharing it here so that you can see it if you'd like to. But for now, that is all. And my next video, I am going to be painting and I will be showing you the behind the scenes. But also, if you would like to see the full process of my paintings and a little bit less of me yapping, I do have a Patreon where I focus only on the work behind my art, on the techniques, on the process, and all of those technical parts of my art, and I show the full process behind every single painting, sketch, drawing, everything. So I will also link that if you're interested in seeing it. But for now, I am going to go finish this up and make myself some tea and start painting. Bye!